Hello, my jelly fighters. My name is Jim, and this is your Daily Brogue for the 5th of July. I would like to not die by being eaten by vampire bats on depth 6. That is my goal today. But if I say that, obviously I'm going to be killed by eels on depth 2, which is one of the most common deaths. I think it is the most common death. If you go to WebBrogue, if you go to the web app, and it keeps track of that thing, I think being killed by eels on depth 2 is the most likely story. And depending on depth too, sometimes it's extremely difficult to avoid, right? It can be extremely difficult to avoid. There'll be just a spot where there's an eel and it's very difficult to get through. Now I wanted to talk about the limitations on speech. Last time we talked about things I thought, right? Um, Based on my personal views of the Constitution, and that might not be, uh, this has nothing to do with um, let's say real legal scholarship or anything like that. But in general, I am not in favor of um, anything juvenile. But that just because I'm not in favor of it doesn't mean it's not constitutionally protected. Um, and there's sort of levels of constitutional protection. There is a very I should say, practical way of saying things that the Constitution says what the Supreme Court says. Of course, Supreme Court changes its mind, therefore, the Constitution says different things at different times, or right, if you really hold that as a principle, then you don't get to complain when all of a sudden there are five conservative members instead of five liberal members and of the Supreme Court, and then they say it means something else. We're not really interested so much in the First Amendment, though we're interested in is where should these limits be. And the First Amendment could be either weaker or stronger than it needs to be to protect where it needs to be. And it's probably better if it's a little bit stronger than it actually needs to be to protect what we need as far as um, protections from speech in a democracy, protections of speech, for speech in the democracy, not from speech. You need protections from speech in an autocracy. Right? You need to make sure that in an autocracy that no one is able to speak their mind, right? So, in fact, sometimes you need compelled speech, right? So, for example, in a place like Iran, excuse me, um, people will be expected to demonstrate when the government tells them to go demonstrate. They might pay some people, or they might just punish you if you don't. Assume that you are with the damned dirty Zionists. Okay, so tunneling haste, really good haste. Haste is not good. So got a nice staff room here full of crappy says. Isn't that nice? Absolutely not worth the rat trap. Okay, let's see. What should we do? Well, let's try chainmail. There's another door key, which means there should be another door. The other door has to be down there. There we go. And another staff room. And it is just as crappy. Okay. Okay, so what we'd like to do is we'd like to do a little more. Who's this guy? A little more advanced work on this, right? So we want to have a little more advanced a view of more or less what we need to do in this case, right? This is good. Strength is good. Darkness is bad. Visibility is good. So if there's anything good about this chainmail, it'll actually trigger now. Again, so one thing I had been listening to was somebody talking about sort of levels of tolerance, right? Um, and this actually comes from a footnote. The ultimate origin is from a footnote in Karl Popper's The Open Society and Its Enemies, which I have not found yet. I've been rereading it. I haven't read it for 30 years or something like that. And so I certainly don't remember the footnotes, but I know I have heard a lot of people talk about this particular footnote. And oftentimes, when they're talking about it, they have a very strong opinion about something or other that seems to me to go against the main thrust of the Open Society and its enemies, which might not be true. Because again, when did I read that? A very long time ago. So I could very easily be incorrect, right? I could very easily miss something that would be very important to note. So the reason why I'm rereading it is partially because of that, and partially because I haven't read it for a long time. It's a good book. I remember it as being a very good book, The Open Society and Its Enemies by Karl Popper. But well, actually, he was with another guy too. So there were like two people together, and they wrote a paper that started discussing. This was the wrong way to do it. Tolerance, sort of levels of tolerance. Okay? And in this case, what they were saying is that the kind of speech that should enjoy the most protection might possibly be, well, actually, it might be a little more complicated with speech than with some other things, but there's a strong supposition that original ideas should enjoy a really strong amount of free speech, a really strong amount of tolerance, whereas more ideas criticizing that more uh, might enjoy less tolerance. This might not be the best way to characterize it, right? So this is difficult again because it is speech, right? It's difficult because levitation and creeping death. All right, because there might be other things that we think are more fundamental than speech, right? So we might decide that it's very important to not. I could die here easily. There I go. I was lucky. I was probably safe, and then I moved when confused. So if we think that the first order is tolerance of other people's races and religions, then speech about that might be, we might want to be intolerant about that. Although I'd say we have to be careful about that because often if you give people a hammer like that, turns out they'll use it. So I guess it's not at all surprising, but if people start to use a hammer like that, then a lot of times it's reasonably poor as far as final conditions go. So um, you do want to be careful. Okay, let's see. I do have the tunneling. It's tunneling too, and I just don't want to go anywhere near that ogre. Oop, I don't want tunneling. I don't want tunneling. I don't really want a government body wandering around knowing what is good speech and what is bad speech, because the whole point of this is we want to be able to criticize the government. It's the whole point of free speech is criticizing the government, and the government telling us what is good speech and what is bad speech basically eliminates that. Whatever you decide is bad speech, the government is going to tell you your criticism of its programs is, falls into that situation. You know, something good was probably about to happen. I did have a protect weapon, had a crappy weapon. I should have put the chainmail back on. Probably should have tried the should before I started fighting that thing. All right. So in general, very bad game. So we have these levels of uh, restrictions. So original ideas should be more open. We should be more open to, and criticism of those ideas possibly less open to. That doesn't make it sound good, right? When we say possibly we should be open to, we should be more tolerant of other races, let's say, and then we should be intolerant of criticism of other races. That sounds good. But if we do it the other way, we do it just in terms of speech. This is interesting. We should be tolerant of ideas and then less tolerant of criticism of those ideas. That actually sounds bad, right? Well, we normally say we want to be more tolerant of the criticism than of the ideas themselves. So I'm not sure if that really works. Um, some of these things had to do with interruptions with stuff. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about those interruptions because we started this second attempt at doing this with Senator Padilla and his publicity stunt. Publicity stunt.